Hi, welcome back to the Online Jewelry Academy. I'm John Ahr and I'm your instructor. Today we're going to make a lashed sea glass bracelet. Now, a lot of times you'll go to the ocean and you'll collect sea glass in the surf and you don't know what to do with it other than keep it in a jar. Many students have asked me for projects that they could make with sea glass, but unfortunately, because the material is very easy to break, and the fact that it's uneven in its edges and the way that the surface of the material moves, it's not easy to set into a piece of jewelry. So I've come up with an easy bracelet for you to make that you can make in just one sitting. Now, we're going to use a button, pieces of sea glass of different colors, and some suede material and some other blue lashing material, which is also made out of leather, in order to make this bracelet. Let me show you what you're going to need to make the project. First, you're going to need some leather cord, and in this case I've got some light blue suede. In addition to that, you're also going to need some material to do your lashing with. Now, this blue turquoise colored material is actually leather, but you could get away with some fabric material. This is 1 millimeter cord. These items are all available through your local fabric store. If not, you should be able to find them online. You also need a variety of material to put together. Now, this sea glass material, we have the ocean here in California, but if you don't live near an ocean, you can actually go to your local florist and buy a vase filler. Now, there's different colors available, and you want a little bit of variety in your project in order to make it more interesting. Now, if you have some interesting stones, you could add these as well. And if you have been to the beach, you might want to put some of your favorite shells or little souvenirs that you've picked up along the way, either at a novelty store or hobby store. Now, you may want to add some beads, and in this case I've got glass beads and metal beads, and you'll notice that they have a very large hole. The reason for that is because both ends of the leather are going to have to go through the bead, so you're going to need a larger hole. And finally, you need a button. Now, you can use one that has a little hole on the back side of it, or you can use a traditional button with the 2 holes. Either way, you want to make sure that the holes are large enough to receive the leather. The button is going to serve as your clasp. Okay, so now that you know what the materials are, let me explain what the supplies for actually putting the project together are. All right, so I've got several things here. Now, let me move these. These are my cutting tools. I have a pair of scissors for cutting the leather, but sometimes I may need to actually shave the leather to a thin angle, or I might need to cut close. Now, for those 2 operations, I have 2 other tools besides the scissors. I've got a utility knife. You could substitute with a razor blade. Just be careful not to cut yourself. And for snipping really close, I have a pair of wire cutters. And of course, these are going to cut through the leather really easily. Now, the lashing is sometimes hard to manipulate, and it's especially hard at times to pull the leather through. So for this, I have a pair of tweezers. Now, I'm going to be working with some blue leather, and for that reason, I've selected to use a blue colored pencil. It doesn't matter what colored leather you work with, but I recommend that you use a colored pencil that can disguise your marks fairly easily if you go outside of the lines. And lastly, we're going to use krazy glue to attach the sea glass. Now, I have 2 different types. I've got the kind that you drop in, and I've also got the brushable kind. If you can't find the brushable in your area, you can probably order it online. Okay, let me show you how we get started. Now, first of all, if you're like me, you probably need a pair of glasses so that you can see what you're doing. Now, first I'm going to use the button, and I'm going to grab a piece of blue suede. Now, what I like to do is I like to put one end of the leather through each of the holes and then pull it to the end. Now, you don't necessarily need the whole length of leather, but if you put the button to the middle of the leather, it'll allow you to create any length that you need. And remember, everybody has a different size, or you may actually want to turn this into, say, a longer belt, or maybe a wraparound bracelet. Okay, so now the button is at the end of, or in the middle of the cord. So we want to secure this, and we want to attach the two ends of the cord together, and then we want to lash it. Okay, to attach the cord together, I just need a small drop of the krazy glue. Alright, so I'm going to hold the leather, and I'm going to just put a small drop of the krazy glue onto the leather, and then just pinch it together. And you only have to pinch for a second to attach the two pieces together. Now don't glue your fingers to the project, which is pretty easy to do. And I like to recap my krazy glue and put it back in the container so that it doesn't spill out and make a mess. Alright, so the two pieces of leather are joined together and the button is being held in place. Now I want to lash that button, or put a little piece of lashing behind it. It's somewhat decorative, but it will also help to hold the leather together. So what I'm going to use is some of the 1mm leather cord. Now, I'm going to cut approximately 6 inches of this material off of the end of my length of blue leather lashing cord. Now, lashing is basically tying, and it's a fairly simple operation. First thing that you want to do is lay one end of the cord that you're using to lash with along the major cord. And I want to pinch it at one end and start to wrap it around. Now once I've got that process started, what I want to do is I want to wrap around the cord itself and the two parts that I'm trying to connect. And you always want to be consistent with this in order for the project to look nice. So I'm going to wrap around 3 times. It takes a little bit of coordination to do this, but it's worth the time and trouble. Okay, so I've made 3 loops around my cord, and I've got a small end left over, and I'm going to poke that through the 3 loops. Now here's where my tweezers might come in handy. I can actually reach through the 3 loops, and I can grab the other end of the cord. Just have to open up the tweezer. There we go. And I can pull it through. Okay, so now I have one end of the lashing cord sticking out near the button and the other's in my fingers. And I just want to start to lightly pull them apart from one another. Now, try to move this fairly close to your button. Try to straighten out the cord so that it looks nice and neat. And then when you get it to the position that you want and it's lined up very nicely, just give it a little bit of a tug to tighten it up. And you can use your fingernails to keep it straight. And there you go. That's how to pull the lashing. Now these pieces that are sticking out are going to be cut away. So I'll use the wire cutters to do that. So I'm going to snip very close to the end of the lashing. And I'm doing it on both sides. Okay, now in order to make sure that this doesn't unravel, I'm going to use a little drop of glue right near the ends of the lashing. So I'm going to basically glue it to itself. Remember, don't glue your fingers to your project. And a couple of things. It may smell like the leather's burning a little bit. That's just the chemical reaction of the glue bonding itself to the leather. And when you pinch down to hold something, if you feel a little bit of warmth, that's just the glue reacting to the protein in the leather. Okay, so this button is now secured in place. So now what I want to do is I want to put the first piece of glass into the bracelet. So I'm going to lay out the cord, and I want to establish a top and a bottom. So I'm going to pull the top part to one side, and I'm going to lay out the bottom. Now let me grab a piece of glass. Okay, so there's a piece of glass that I'm going to use. It's got a little something on it. I'm going to pull that off. Okay, now what I want to do is lay the glass in, and then I'm going to take my colored pencil and just mark where the glass ends. So you can see I made a little mark right there. That's just a guide to show me where I need to put the krazy glue. Alright, now I'm going to use the brushable glue. Now at first what I'm going to do is I just want to seal the leather. So I'm going to take the brush and just lightly brush across the leather. That will seal it. Now what I want to do is re-dip into the glue and brush along the same area, and then quickly grab my piece of glass and press it against the leather, just like that. Hold it down tight for just a few seconds and allow it to bond to the leather. Okay, now you can see it's glued. It's going to stay in place. Now what I want to do is just come back with the top piece and just give it a little mark on the underside. You can see I marked right there. And what I want to do is brush the krazy glue over that surface. Now I'm not brushing directly onto the glass because the glue would spread on the glass and I would lose the opacity. I want it to stay somewhat translucent or opaque, because that's kind of the quality of the sea glass. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to brush lightly just to seal the leather. Okay, I'm dipping back in and I'm going to give a heavier amount, and then I'm quickly going to line it up and press it down against the piece of glass. Now if you used too much glue, this is where your finger could stick to it. So just be careful not to use too much glue. Okay, and look, but it's easy to pull off. No worries. Okay, so now the piece of glass is glued in place. And what I want to do is basically to secure it at the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the pieces of leather apart. I'm going to come in with the krazy glue, and I'll just put a little bit on both sides and then quickly just pinch them together. Okay, so now the cord is attached to itself and fully wrapped around the piece of glass. So the next step is to repeat the lashing process once again. So I'll take my cord, I'll cut off about a 5 or 6 inch length of cord, lie one end lengthwise with the light blue leather, pinch it at the end, initiate the first wrap, go around once, twice, and a third time. And you want to make these loops kind of loose. And then what I'm going to do is take that end and poke it through. And you see, this time I didn't need the tweezers to help me at all. So once it's through, I just lightly pull the cord ends away from each other. And remember, like I said, you want to establish a top and a bottom, and you want to work with the small 1 millimeter leather very gently, because if you pull it too hard, it can actually snap. That's why the first time you do this, you may want to actually use the material cording instead. There you go. So I'll let you take a good look at that. So the loops are there, all 3 of them, and I have the ends coming out on either side. Okay, so I'll give it a little bit of one more tug, and now I'll take my cutters and I'll snip the ends away. I like to save these little ends because you never know, they might be useful for some other project in the future. Okay, so I've got the first piece down, and I want to secure the ends of the lashing, so I'm going to use the dropper glue. And I'm going to come back and I'm just going to put a little drop of glue on the leather to just glue it to itself. So I'm going to cap my glue back so I don't make a mess. Set that aside. Now I'm ready to do the second piece of glass. So again, I've got a top and a bottom. I'm laying the bottom part out. I pull the top piece back and out of the way, and I'll go for my next piece of glass. Set that in. I'm going to mark the bottom. Take that away. Okay, remember, I brush lightly just to seal the leather. Come back, I put more of the krazy glue down and quickly push my piece of glass against the leather cord. You only need to hold it for a few seconds, but you do want to apply a little bit of pressure. Okay, taking my colored pencil, I bring the cord back over, I mark the underside. There's my mark. Taking the krazy glue, I seal the leather. I come back and I'm going to paint over it again and quickly line it up and press it to the glass. So basically you're going to repeat these steps over and over again until you establish a length that's long enough for whatever project you're making, be it a bracelet, a belt, a wraparound bracelet, or a pendant. I'm going to work on this a little bit more and I'll come back and show you how to end the project. Well, I've been working on this for a few minutes, and previously what I had been doing is at this point I would take the pieces and I would apply a little bit more glue and pinch the two together. Well, what I want to do now is I pretty much kind of want to fake what I'm going to, the connection. Meaning that I want to leave a little bit of cord and pull it back to create that type of a loop that the button can fit through. So I've established that that's the length that I want. So now I'm going to mark this piece of cord and cut it. Okay, so I marked it on one side. I'll mark it on the other. Okay. And this is where I may want to shave the leather. So I'll take the utility blade, and rather than cutting right on the line, I'm going to cut an angle to the line. So let's see if I can do this well. I probably have to put it on the edge of my workbench to do this. And that spot on my knife is a little dull, so I'll try a different spot. There we go. Okay. Put that away so I don't cut myself. Put that extra piece of leather to the side. So now I have an angle, and what I can do is bring this back and attach it to itself. And I'm going to do that with just a little bit of the glue. So I'm going to take the brushable glue and I'm going to brush to seal the leather here. I'll come back. I'll put a little bit more of the glue and then quickly come back, and with that end of the leather I'm going to pinch it and place it so that I make a nice loop. Now with the other end of the material, what I want to do is I'm going to leave it long. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to add a little bit of glue on top of the area that I just attached, just a touch. And I'm going to pinch together. I'm going to hold this for a second, let it attach. Okay, now we're ready to make the end. So I've left one end long, and I've double backed the other to make that loop. So now what I want to do is lash it to make it look uniform to the entire piece. So I'll cut about 5 or 6 inches of the 1 millimeter leather cord. And again, to lash it, I line up the small cord with the larger suede material that's holding the glass. I pinch down at the end. I'm going to hold it, and I'm going to loop around 3 times. Consistency is going to make your project look more professional. There's 2. Okay, and I'm coming around for my 3rd loop. Okay, and now I'm going to take that short end and push it through my loops. I have two ends of the lashing. I lightly pull them apart, and I'm going to position the loops so that they line up nice and neat. They kind of want to overlap each other, so you need to use your fingernails to kind of move them around. Be bossy, push them into place. Okay, as long as the top of the piece looks good, you're in okay. All right. Now at this point, when I have the lashing nice and tight, what I can do is I can snip away the lashing material. That one went flying. And I'll do it on the other side. Okay, I'm going to take a drop from the droppable one, and I'm going to glue it in place. Remember, I'm gluing it to itself so that it doesn't come apart. You don't want to use too much of this krazy glue because it can make the leather very stiff, and it can change the color of it too. Okay, so now that that's done, I can come back and I'm going to use my wire cutters, and this time I'm going to cut the main cord, and I'm going to cut it very close to the lashing material. There we go. So now this is a completed bracelet. Let me clean this up a little bit so you can take a better, closer look at it. So I have the button on one end with the lashing underneath, the individual pieces of glass glued between two layers of suede material, and then lashed with the turquoise blue lashing material in between, leaving the loop at the end. Now, when you put this on, bracelets sometimes are hard to put on by yourself, so you may want to just lay it against a table surface and bring it around. And then this way you can easily get the button in place and push it through the loop, like so. There we go. And now you have a nice summer bracelet to keep all your sea glass souvenirs in one place and make them wearable. I hope you enjoy making this and the other projects on the Online Jewelry Academy. Check us out at onlinejewelryacademy.com and check out our videos and products. We'll see you next time. Bye.